Here are a few of the wildest judges out there. Number 8. Diane Vettori-Caraballo. How much money has to be involved for a judge to steal it? How much would make them break their sworn oath to uphold the law? For Judge Diane Caraballo, the price was a little over $300,000. As an attorney and judge, Caraballo had many different responsibilities. She oversaw Mahoning County Court No. 3, dealing with misdemeanors and traffic cases. She also offered estate planning services, and in 2015 was hired by Robert Sampson to plan his estate. Caraballo was supposed to draw up his will for him. Later that year, in November, the judge filed an administration application over Sampson's estate. The form stated he died without a will. Sampson's closest relation was a sister named Dolores Falgiani. A few days before the application was approved, Caraballo was also put in charge of Falgiani's will. Falgiani passed away in March of 2016, leaving Caraballo to go over her estate. She wanted her estate to be distributed among friends, family, and several animal charities. Caraballo had other ideas. Caraballo reported that she found $20,000 in some shoeboxes while going over everything and counted it towards the estate's value. Secretly, she'd found a lot more than that in 2 other locations. In total, police believe she stole about $100,000 to $325,000 in cash from Falgiani's home. Unbeknown to the judge, Falgiani had already made people aware of the money she hid away. When Caraballo's $20,000 find came up, it seemed suspicious, so the FBI began investigating. She had many chances to report the money as she filed 2 more reports for newly discovered assets. Never once did she report the stolen money. It wasn't long before they discovered that Caraballo was making structured payments to multiple banks with the money. Federal law requires banks to report any deposit over $10,000 to the IRS. So the crooked judge began depositing less than that at multiple banks to hide her crime. When confronted, Caraballo denied everything, but she was already caught. Once arrested and in court, she pleaded guilty to mail fraud, lying to law enforcement, and structuring cash deposits. Caraballo was convicted and sent off to a prison nicknamed Camp Cupcake, the same prison that held Martha Stewart. Police only recovered $50 worth of Falgiani's missing money. It seems like no one will ever know what the judge did with that money. Number 7. Cason Moreland. Judge Cason Moreland was accused of receiving favors in exchange for better treatment in his courtroom. His problem all started when a woman came forward and told a Nashville news station that she had been let off on some traffic fines by Moreland, prompting the FBI to open an investigation. It didn't take long before word of the investigation got back to the judge, and now he had to dig his way out. This was when he should have stopped digging, but he just couldn't put his shovel down. His first plan was to hire a third party to meet with his accuser and pay her off. To do this, he stole around $6,000 from a non-profit charity he had control over that supported the drug court. Moreland took this to mean he could do whatever he wanted with the money coming in. However, Moreland's plan backfired. His accomplice became an FBI informant, so Moreland kept digging. Next, he came up with a plan to plant drugs in the woman's car. Then, he'd have her pulled over by police, and presto, credibility destroyed. He went full burn notice, trying to accomplish all of this with a burner phone bought under a false name. This wasn't the first time he stole money that he was supposed to be protecting. It was discovered that he had actually been pulling money from the charity funds for his expenses. He admitted in court that he started embezzling in early 2016 and even tried convincing a witness to destroy documents that proved his involvement in the embezzlement. Moreland was convicted of embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. He was sentenced to 44 months in jail and had to pay restitution of $18,000. Number 6. Mike Mirabal. In October 2021, former Judge Mike Mirabal was near his apartment complex's entrance gate in Miami, Florida, as he was out getting groceries. A man Mirabal didn't know asked him to unlock the gate. He told the former judge that he had forgotten his phone in his cousin's apartment. Mirabal asked him a question regarding which apartment he was heading to. He didn't like the response he got, so he declined to help him. At this point, the story begins to differ according to who's telling it. Mirabal reported that the man started cursing at him and saying he would fight him. However, the other man claimed that he had just started yelling for his cousin to come down. Eventually, the cousin hears the man and comes to let him in. When he heard what happened, he decided to talk with his neighbor about the situation. Once again, we have 2 different accounts of what happened. Mirabal stated that he was in his garage when the same man from before approached him, saying he wanted to fight. The judge claimed that he pulled his gun and placed it behind his back before warning the man that he was armed. The man and his cousin both claimed they just went to talk to Mirabal to clear clear everything up. Allegedly, that's when he pointed his gun, pulled back its slide twice, and began threatening them. The pair of men called the cops, and when they showed up, the judge was arrested on the spot. The 911 call backs up the cousin's story. You can hear the man on the phone with the dispatcher telling the judge to get away from him, which was heard 4 separate times during the call. Surprisingly, the whole ordeal wasn't Mirabal's first brush with controversy. He had recently been elected to his judicial duties in January 2021, but was forced to resign amid numerous misconduct allegations. The October incident probably didn't help his future chances. Number 5. GERALD GARSON. Judge GERALD GARSON, a former New York Supreme Court justice, oversaw divorce and custody hearings. Most of his peers applauded him as a fair judge. However, most of those good reviews may have come off the back of bribes. Judge Garson had a whole operation that started with a fixer named Nissim Elman. Elman approached people due in Garson's courtroom with an offer. For a fee, Elman would point them in the direction of a lawyer with connections in the court, connections to Judge Garson. This lawyer was Paul Simonovsky, and he was no stranger to the pay-to-win strategy available in Garson's court. Usually, this type of plan wouldn't work since the system randomly picks judges for each case. However, Simonovsky would bribe the court officials to ensure certain people got in front of Garson. Once bribed, Garson coached the lawyer on precisely what questions to ask and arguments to get their desired ruling. It all came to an abrupt end in 2002 when Frida Hellman tried to use this system to her advantage, only to be told that her husband had already offered a bigger bribe. Deciding she wouldn't lose that way, Frida went to the cops and told them the situation. It wasn't long before she was back in a room with Elman wearing a wire. This meeting eventually led to Judge Garson being arrested and convicted of accepting bribes. In 2007, he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. Number 4. Thomas Maloney. Thomas Maloney's obituary in the Chicago Tribune says, the first and remains the only Cook County judge to be convicted of rigging murder cases for cash. His reputation as a judge who could be bought followed him all the way to his grave. He became known for his corruption shortly after being elected to his office in 1977. While Maloney's public image was that of a strict judge that despised gangsters, even referring to them as the lowest sort of cowards, he regularly got mafia members and other criminals off in their cases. Maloney used a bagman as an intermediary between himself and whoever was trying to bribe him. Lucius Robinson's bailiff was his bagman for years. When he eventually got swept up in an ongoing FBI investigation into Judge Maloney, a man named Robert McGee took over. Finally, the FBI came knocking on Maloney's door with information that he was the judge accepting bribes. Maloney quickly came up with a story to defend himself. He alleged that Robinson and McGee took the money themselves and never actually bribed him at all. However, the investigation found evidence to the contrary. Maloney was convicted on 4 counts of accepting bribes, 3 of which were in murder cases. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison in 1994, but only served 12. His conviction had far-reaching consequences as all of the cases he tried came into question. Some of the convicted people had their cases reopened for a bribery investigation. His arrest was part of a much larger FBI operation named Operation Greylord. By the end of it, 17 different judges were convicted of corruption. Number 3. Donna Davenport. Typically, offenders are guaranteed innocent until proven guilty. However, under the policies of Judge Donna Davenport, over 1,000 children were criminally mistreated. In Tennessee, Judge Davenport presided over the juvenile court in Rutherford County. She was well known for being a callous judge that seemed to take pride in her harsh punishments of children. She believed that rehabilitation could be gained through harsh treatment, tough love, if you will. To enact what she saw as justice, she created policies that allowed children to be arrested and brought to a detention center without evidence to support their arrests. Generally, if a child is accused of a crime, they're brought to court with their parents to assess their guilt. In 2016, multiple children were charged with criminal responsibility for the conduct of another for not stopping a fight that was caught on video. There's only one problem. That charge does not exist. Attorney Frank Brazil said in an interview with ABC News, quote, "So that being applied as a charge in and of itself is unlawful." A radio station and a website started the investigation that ultimately stopped the perversion of the justice system. The youngest of Davenport's victims were around 8 and 9 years old. Rutherford County agreed to pay $7.75 million to the wrongfully arrested and detained children. Davenport lost her job as a teacher at Middle Tennessee State University, and her policies have since been stopped. Sadly, the real-world Dolores Umbridge still presides over Rutherford County Juvenile Court. Number 2. Tracy Hunter. Tracy Hunter was a juvenile court judge in Hamilton County, Ohio, who abused her power in multiple ways. Her beginning as a judge was controversial, as she got the position almost 2 years after it was filled. A lawsuit Hunter submitted to recount the votes went through, and she was awarded the position as the new winner. Once in office, it wasn't too long before she came under fire for tampering with documents. By the time 2014 came around, she was indicted on 8 felony charges. She backdated documents so lawyers couldn't appeal her decisions in time to stop them. She also used a credit card that wasn't hers to pay for her legal troubles. It seemed like trouble ran in the family. Her brother, who worked at the courthouse, was in the process of being fired for punching a teen. She took documents that might benefit her brother and tried to give them to his attorney, which was a big no-no. In October of 2014, Judge Hunter was convicted on 1 count for providing her brother with documents. However, the jurors couldn't come to an agreement on the rest of the charges, so they were dropped. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, but she had one last show for everyone in the courtroom. When the former judge heard her verdict, she decided that she wasn't going and had to be dragged out of the courtroom. Number 1. Joe Brown. Anyone who watched daytime TV in the early 2000s would recognize Judge Joe Brown from his popular court show. He also had experience as a lawyer, and when asked by a lady to help in her custody case, he agreed. Brown and his client showed up for court, but were told their case was not on the schedule. Brown didn't take that news lightly and threw a temper tantrum in the courtroom. After a moment of loud banter where he was warned that he would be in contempt of court, he ended up exactly that. Brown was removed from the courtroom and arrested on charges of contempt. He was released later that same day under his own recognizance. Click here to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section who your favorite TV judge is.